We are back. Let's get to what we mentioned at the top of the broadcast. An important development in this Russia investigation this evening, and it could shed some light on what's next. Earlier tonight, Robert Mueller's team and lawyers for Paul Manafort, notably, told the court they want more time before filing a status update for Manafort's case in Washington, D.C. We have a very smart lawyer on standby to explain all these words. Instead of updating the court on a possible sentencing date tomorrow, they now want to wait until December 26th. The court filing said the delay will allow both sides to, quote, provide the court with a report that will be of greater assistance in the court's management of this matter. After reading this news earlier tonight, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and currently a member of our team of legal analysts, Daniel Goldman, wrote this on Twitter. Reading tea leaves, and we love when he does that, Manafort's cooperation is relevant to something that will happen in the next 10 days. Since next week is Thanksgiving, I'm betting on indictments tomorrow. Could just be Stone, but could be more too. Well, with us to talk about it, Maya Wiley, who also happens to be a former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, currently a professor at the New School here in New York, and Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence, who in the past has worked for Robert Mueller. All right, Counselor, how do you read this court filing?
A tantalizing tidbit for those of us waiting for the main course.
And those of you who can understand the language used in court filings, what gets your attention in that verbiage?
The primary thing, as Dan said, is that, first of all, you have both sides agreeing that they need more time. Remember that we have Manafort, who has pled guilty before that court, is cooperating. What it's telling us is that he is still providing information that's useful. They want to probably indict, as Dan says, and the question is who, and that Paul Manafort has been useful in that process, and that's why it will be more helpful to the court for them to be able to share where they are and what that means for sentencing. Because remember that for sentencing, it's the judge that decides what sentence Paul Manafort will get, but it's the federal prosecutors who decide how they position him and what their recommendation to the court is, and that is all about his cooperation. So this really does tell us that something's about to happen.
All right, Frank Figliuzzi, reminding our viewers that Roger Stone is the former business partner of Paul Manafort. Same question to you about the importance of what came out tonight.
Yeah, Manafort knows a lot. He knows a lot about Stone. And, Brian, I'm trying very hard not to jump to conclusions and let the imagination run wild.
But go ahead,
I'm failing.
Frank.
I agree. No, I agree with Maya. I think, and with others, I think something's afoot. What is it, right? This begs the question, what is it that's going to transpire in the next several days that is going to give the court much greater insight into the level of cooperation of Manafort? And why would both sides agree to this delay? This is unlikely to be a negative slap against Manafort and a lack of cooperation, but rather it's probably going to, those days are going to permit the Mueller team to point to some indictments and say, Manafort did this. He helped us with this. Here it is. They're not ready to tell us what that is yet. They're not ready to tell the court yet, but it's coming.
And, Frank, I thought of you today during the president's Twitter tirade. It was mentioned on Nicole Wallace's program, as we've mentioned it repeatedly on this program. If in a laboratory you sat down to make the human antithesis of Donald Trump, you would come up with Robert Mueller in terms of bearing and propriety and decorum and service and duty, honor, country, discretion. All of that. What are your thoughts regarding the way the president spoke to him and treated him today?
Well, I think that Mueller is sitting back and just taking this all in. I actually think there's some legal significance and prosecutive significance to what we're seeing the president do with regard to Mueller. I think that the team, the special counsel team, is recording, documenting all of the public outrage and tirades. And and tweets, and it's all going on a timeline as to what happened when, what triggered this, whether or not this involves witness tampering or intimidation. For example, Brian, we heard the president respond to a question about who his next AG might be with a response about how great Whitaker is. Well, that's very interesting because it seems to be a signaling that if we get this right, if Whitaker gets this right, I'm talking about him in the context of my next attorney general. And in the next breath, the president says the Mueller investigation is unlawful, it's illegal, it shouldn't be happening. So there's insight there that has significance for the Mueller team. They're recording it, taking it all in. But you're right. We're talking about a man of professionalism, restraint, dedication to mission, national interest over self-interest. That's what Mueller's all about.
And Maya, where the protection of Robert Mueller comes in, I want to play for you. Lindsey Graham has now met with the new acting attorney general, and he had this to say afterwards.
We talked about, regular order regarding the Mueller investigation, that there's a process for special counsels. Got the Deputy Attorney General and goes up to the Attorney General, and that he's committed to following regular order, and I don't think he's going to do anything unsavory. I have a lot of confidence that Mr. Mueller will be allowed to do his job, and that the legal process that was in place before Mr. Whitaker arrived will be followed.
Did he express any concerns with the way that the investigation is being handled or it's being run?
He says, as far as he knows, no, not at all. He's seen nothing out of bounds, no concerns at all about Mr. Mueller.
A little tough to hear there, but we get the gist. And Maya, I'm tempted to ask you, what could go wrong?
Oh, what could go wrong, Brian? Well, first of all, we have an ethics problem. This is flat out a situation in which Mr. Whitaker has to recuse. He just does. In fact, if he doesn't recuse, we're essentially saying that our ethics code and the ethics code for the Department of Justice doesn't mean anything. And that's really devastating for our legal system. We should not have a public that has questions about what the highest law enforcement officer in the land is doing in that job and whether or not he's violating any of our norms around how an investigation is being handled. But secondly, I'm struck by the fact that Lindsey Graham sort of saying, he said he won't do wrong, I believe him. Because Donald Trump also said repeatedly, Putin has said to me repeatedly that he is not meddling in U.S. elections, and I believe him. Well, that's not good enough. It's not good enough. We, as the American people, and certainly our senators, should not take someone who has made public statements to the contrary on their word that they will not do anything wrong.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.